This is Victoria Cartagena. I play Renee Montoya on Gotham, and you're listening to Gotham TV Podcast.
Hey, this is Andrew Stewart-Jones. I play Christopher Allen on Gotham, and you are listening to Gotham TV Podcast.
Hello and welcome to Gotham TV Podcast, the home of the hit show Gotham, now renewed for Season 2, and also the DC Connected Universe. I'm one of your hosts, John.
And I'm Derek. Welcome.
Welcome. So, how are you, Derek?
I'm doing pretty good, yeah.
You're still surviving the fact that Gotham's still not over here on Channel 5?
A bit longer break than I would have liked between episode 10 of Gotham and episode 11. But hey, we've got loads of stuff to keep us going.
Loads of stuff.
How about yourself? How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. Okay. Yeah, I'm doing fine.
Good.
Hunky-dory.
All right, well, I guess we'll head on to the news then.
Yeah. So the first bit of Gotham news, which is the big news from the Television Critics Association, the TCAs, that were held over early January, is that Gotham has officially been renewed by Fox in the US for a second season. This was at the winter event of the TCAs on Saturday, 17th of January. Yeah, and the co-chairman CEO of Fox, Dana Walden, said that they love the show, and they've basically told the team behind that's Danny Cannon, that's Bruno Heller, that's the cast of characters, them to keep doing what they're doing, to carry on and come up with season 2, I suppose, for this year. Later this year.
Absolutely, yeah. They seem very impressed with the show. The ratings have been extraordinary, really, when you take into account the 10-day viewership of people who've recorded the show and watching it. It seems to be one of the highest rated shows out there, and definitely one of the highest rated comic book connected shows. I think the most recent figures, if you add The Flash, Arrow, Constantine, and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. together, it's pretty close to about 10 million viewers. And every week, Gotham's pulling in about 8.5 million. And
wow.
Then you add on the 10-day ratings, and they're up to about 16 million. So definitely, Fox are very impressed.
Great numbers there for North America.
Yeah.
Definitely.
As you say, their only note that they gave to the cast and crew of the show was keep doing what you're doing. Don't change a thing. It's definitely working for them.
Well, that's great. That's what you want to hear.
Yeah, so really, really good. So the other huge piece of news for us and for where we live in Ireland, RTÉ have announced and they've officially confirmed that Gotham will premiere on our national broadcaster, RTÉ2, next Monday, the 26th of January, at 9 p.m. They've released a trailer for it, specifically for RTÉ, which you can see in the show notes. Really delighted about this. It really means that a lot of our friends have been asking us about the show because as we mentioned months ago, a lot of people in Ireland can't get Channel 5, unfortunately. So this will bring hopefully a much bigger audience in our home country, which means our friends are going to be able to listen to the podcast, which is great.
Yeah, it really opens up Ireland to the wonders of Gotham, which is great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Robin Lord Taylor fans have been asking one question very regularly for months now. What do previous actors who've played this iconic character of Oswald Cobblepot, aka the Penguin, think about his performance as the young Oswald Cobblepot on the show? Well, an answer was given at the TCAs again over that weekend, the January the 17th, when Danny DeVito was asked for his opinion, and he told AccessHollywood.com that he's watched the show, and he thinks Robin Lord Taylor, is a very good Penguin. He's a terrific actor. And so Danny DeVito was there saying it was like great performance being delivered by Robin Lord Taylor there. I think we've said, he's kind of bookended a lot of the episodes with some iconic intro, some iconic sort of cliffhanger that he's done. Penguin's Umbrella, one of the best episodes so far of the first 10. Obviously, there's another 12 still to go. But that's great news for a previous Penguin, a previous Oswald Cobblepot, to give such a ringing endorsement of Robin Lord Taylor and his portrayal. Just to mention that Danny DeVito, he was at the TCAs to promote It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Yeah,
absolutely. So that was really good.
Yeah, we saw Robin Lord Taylor receive the news on Twitter when it was sent to him by one of his fans. Sent him the quote from Danny DeVito, and he's over the moon. I think he's been kind of hoping that at some point Danny DeVito would see his portrayal and hopefully be impressed with it. And yeah, really good reaction from Robin Lord Taylor there. And as well, we also saw Drew Powell, who plays Butch Gilzean, reply to the tweet, essentially looking for Danny DeVito to play his father on the show. They all want him on board. Danny DeVito has said if they reach out to him to play a part, he'd really have to think about the scheduling, because obviously he's working on a TV show every week himself, so it's quite difficult for him to jump on board with Gotham, but he does like the show. So that was quite an interesting little bit of story.
It's a great little story.
Answers the fan question, which has been going on since day one, I think, since the first trailer I ever saw with Robin Lord Taylor in it. I've seen fans look for that answer, whether Danny DeVito likes the portrayal or not. It's quite interesting. A bit of future news for further episodes of Gotham. Episode 16, which is going to be titled The Blind Fortune Teller, will feature the young John Grayson, who is a member of the Flying Graysons. You might remember the Flying Graysons, the troupe that performs a lot of aerial acts in the circus and contained Dick Grayson, the future Robin. So the part has been cast of John Grayson. It's been announced that Rob Gorey is going to play the part. Quite interested to see this. So obviously Gotham takes place quite a while before Batman. David Massus, who plays Bruce Wayne, is about 12 years old. So the chances of us seeing a Robin or even a baby Robin at this stage would be quite unlikely. But the story will be a significant prequel for what happens with the Graysons. But quite interesting to see that.
Yeah, no, that's a great little new addition to be honest, an already large cast of characters from both the side of good and the side of evil in that sense. So this is another addition which, to be honest, I'm looking forward to seeing now. It will be, will there be a young Dick Grayson, and will he have any interaction with Bruce?
I think it's hugely unlikely we'll see a young Dick Grayson unless David Massus wants to feed a baby a bottle, which would be very weird for the show. But again, it's just again about expanding the cast of characters for the city of Gotham. We've talked about it before many times, that they're really trying to breathe life into this as a living, breathing city, and no city only has 10 or 15 people in it. So really good that they're bringing in these kind of connected cast and connected characters.
Then speaking of expanding rosters, something we'd touched on previously was the introduction of Dr. Crane. Not Dr. Jonathan Crane in this instance, but his father, an older Dr. Crane. And that has been scheduled now for episode 14 of the second half of Gotham. The episode is going to be titled The Fearsome Dr. Crane, and it's going to be played by British actor Julian Sands, who will play the older Dr. Crane, and Charlie Tahan, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly now, will play the young Jonathan Crane, his son. Right. Julian Sands, I recognise his picture instantly when I looked at it. He's from such British movies as Killing Fields and A Room with a View. He's been in Arachnophobia and David Fincher's A Girl with a Dragon Tattoo, the young Henrik. And he's also done TV. He's done Dexter, he's done 24, Person of Interest, and he does have a DC comic book TV adaptation history.
Yeah, he played Jor-El, Superman's daddy, on Smallville. So he's going to play the father of another character in DC in Gotham now. So that's quite interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, more General Zod to Jor-El's.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. But yeah, really interesting casting, and really, really intrigued to see what they do with this character.
I love the title of the episode, though, The Fearsome Dr. Crane. Be interesting.
It's Scarecrowy. Yeah, I like it. I like it a lot. The last bit of news for the week is a little bit of, I guess, sad news. We reported a couple of weeks ago about the casting that had come out for Suicide Squad. The movie's about to start recording and filming in April 2014, so just a couple of months away. And unfortunately, Tom Hardy, who previously had played Bane in The Dark Knight Rises, has had to drop out of this movie. This would have been his second DC movie. He was going to be playing the character of Rick Flag, but the current film that he's working on, The Revenant, has unfortunately run over. So he's currently dedicated to finish that film before he starts anything else. So he has had to drop out of the Suicide Squad. They're currently saying that Jake Gyllenhaal is a likely replacement for this actor. Quite an interesting one.
Interesting. I mean, it's pretty sad that Tom Hardy, he's one of my favourite actors.
Yeah.
It's pretty sad that he's had to pull out like that, but I suppose these kind of scheduling problems can happen from time to time. So, but with Jake Gyllenhaal, I mean, he would be more than adequate replacement. I mean,
Absolutely.
Again, another great actor there.
Yeah.
So see what he can and will bring to the role.
Absolutely. I suppose when you're trying to schedule a film this big with this many quite big actors in it, with Will Smith in there and with Jared Leto as the Joker in there, there's quite a big cast of people to get together and make sure that they can all participate at one particular time. So, the chances that the fact that someone's fallen out of the movie isn't a huge surprise, and still a couple of months before it starts filming, but still hugely excited about that film. So I think that's it for the news. Anything else to comment on?
No, I don't think so for this week. Just can't wait for Gotham to be back. Episode 11 in March.
Yeah, only a couple more weeks to go.
Yeah. But I think with that, we should move on to our first part review of DC and Batman's Hush.
So our review for this week is Volume 1 of Hush, a graphic novel written by Jeph Loeb with art by Jim Lee and Scott Williams. This is Volume 1 that we're covering, and we will be covering Volume 2 next week of this seminal, I suppose, graphic novel.
This first part, Volume 1, covers issues or chapters 1 to 5.
Yeah.
The Ransom, The Friend, The Beast, The City, and The Battle.
Yeah.
All intriguing titles for the issues.
Absolutely, and these were originally released in 2002 and 2003 in issues 608 to 612 of Batman. I suppose what's particularly notable about this arc of Batman and this particular comic book is that it features Tommy Elliot, who is essentially written as a childhood friend of Bruce Wayne. So lots of flashbacks in this book, so it ties in quite well with Gotham. The character of Tommy Elliot was played by Cole Vallis in episode 8 of Gotham, The Mask. Really enjoyed the portrayal there, but very different, and we'll go through some of the kind of differences between the character and some of the kind of nuances that are in there between their relationship as we go through. Hopefully you've read the book. If you haven't, you can pick it up on Comixology, or you can go to Amazon and pick it up. But in general,
yeah, I mean, and one of the great things about Hush is it's set present day continuity, or certainly back when it was published, of the Batman. So it has or can have other characters like Robin or Nightwing or the Oracle, and so on. It's not set in that year one sort of mythology of the Batman coming up with, or Bruce Wayne coming up with the idea of Batman, developing his skills and his techniques, and taking on the persona of Batman. It's beyond that in many respects. So that's really where it stands in a sense within that continuity.
Yeah.
And as you say, written by Jeph Loeb, who went on to do huge amounts of stuff, obviously, at Marvel.
That's
both
right.
for TV and for, as I think, a producer on some of the films as well, or is it just the TV? Certainly Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Agent Carter, and obviously then with regards to the Marvel Netflix TV.
Yeah, he's got quite a big role over at Marvel. He's the head of TV for Marvel Studios, so he's the one that passes all the stories. He writes some of them. He's been involved in all the presentations we saw at New York Comic Con were led by Jeph Loeb. He's heavily involved in Marvel now, but this is one of the big stories that he wrote for DC.
One of your favourites as well. He had done The Long Halloween and the Dark Victory. Again, that was Jeph Loeb. But this time he's changed the artist, whereas The Long Halloween and A Dark Victory was with Tim Sale. He has a great little intro in this first volume of Hush about the fact that he wanted Tim Sale to come on board for this story that he was writing, but that he was busy on other stuff, and I think the editor at the time at DC offered him Jim Lee.
Yeah.
And so it's Jim Lee who is the artist here, and Jeph Loeb describes how he sort of jumped at that chance, in the sense that he would have loved to have still done it with Tim Sale, but he jumped at the chance of Jim Lee. They're both great artists, but he gives a really nice sort of description about their different styles, about how Tim Sale works great with the shadow and the light and with ink, and you see that it's very shadowed, very simple almost in terms of the artwork in The Long Halloween.
Yeah.
But then he says that Jim Lee demands that you see it all, it sort of sees everything. And certainly, when you look at Hush, it's very detailed. Everything is exposed. It's much more detailed, and sort of almost wide angle in terms of the shot and the artwork done here. And then Scott Williams, the inker who you were saying before, he works with Jim Lee, and Scott Williams sound like they have a very strong sort of collaborative, creative partnership there, where Scott almost is a bit like an advisor when he does the inking for Jim Lee. So very interesting dynamic there. But it was great just to hear that little snippet about the two different styles of the artwork, and that ultimately, two great artists there. But in this case, Jeph Loeb teamed up with Jim Lee. Yeah,
definitely. There's many pages in these books that are beautifully drawn, absolutely beautiful. There's some that you could just pull out and put as posters on your wall. I think they're really, really good. Do you want to give us a bit of an overview of this volume 1 of Hush?
Yeah, volume 1 of Hush encapsulates the first 5 issues of the story arc, and we see Batman rescuing a boy kidnapped by Killer Croc, whereupon Catwoman steals the ransom money. As Batman swings through Gotham in pursuit of her, his rope is cut and he falls to the ground, fracturing his skull, nearly killing himself as he falls into a group of criminals. Saved by the Huntress and also his butler, Alfred Pennyworth, he follows the instructions to summon Bruce Wayne's childhood friend, Tommy Elliot, now a renowned brain surgeon.
Good to have friends in high places.
Exactly. And brain surgeons, certainly in that line of work. Batman ultimately recovers and discovers that Poison Ivy had used Catwoman to steal the ransom, and had taken it from her. Batman rescues Catwoman, and a tenuous romance begins to bloom between them. He begins to trust Catwoman, and they work together to track down Poison Ivy, who has fled to Metropolis, Superman's hometown, where she has ensnared him to protect her. Ultimately, behind the scenes is an unknown, shadowy figure whose head is wrapped in bandages. Who is this person?
Yeah, excellent. It's a really interesting storyline for Hush. Firstly, I guess, I read this book many years ago now at this stage, I guess when it came out, and I was quite surprised with it. I must have read both volumes back to back when I originally read it. So the first thing for me is that the character Hush doesn't appear for the vast majority of this book. There's a shadowy character in the background that seems to be watching over all the time and interacting with in the background, but you don't know who it is. You don't have any kind of connection to him. There's no conversations with him and any other characters. That's kind of where I come to this particular comic book from. So it very much feels like a couple of issues of a book rather than a defined, definitive graphic novel, I suppose. But I do like the arc overall, and I do like the interaction that Bruce Wayne has with these characters. What's your feeling on the book itself, these issues?
I think the first half of the Hush story arc here, collected in volume 1, I think it tees it up nicely. I think it presents this confusion and suspicion surrounding an unknown figure who seems to be watching over the whole affair of the kidnap of the boy by Killer Croc, the sort of the cross and double cross between Catwoman, Killer Croc, and Poison Ivy. He seems to be dictating maybe or planning and executing all these different changes within this quite simple storyline. So it sets it up really quite nicely. I think ultimately this first half, it seems to be introducing a very strong theme about sort of friendship, acquaintances, those personal moments. And so that's a very interesting aspect to this first 5 issues of Hush. But yeah, it's very much a tee-up, but it's an intriguing tee-up, and it holds the suspicion over to Volume 2 as to who is the real identity of this unknown person. What is the significance of Tommy Elliot? What is the significance of all of Batman's acquaintances within this story? And that's what's really interesting. I think we do have to make the call that when this was first released, this was where Hush was introduced. This is where Tommy Elliot was introduced. All these new characters. Very much a seminal work in that regards in terms of expanding on the Batman universe, on the Gotham universe, in the same way that Gotham has done with, say, Fish Mooney. So that's a really important context, I think, that we need to place here. Of course, now people are well aware of the character Hush. They're well aware of other aspects of the storyline, more so than back then. So maybe the surprise for people who have read an awful lot of Batman comics is not necessarily there if they reread it. But I think people who are new to comics or reading Hush for the first time, I think this provides a really interesting storyline of Batman when he is up and running and fighting crime in Gotham. It's not his backstory in relation to how he picked the bat as his symbol. It's not about him learning to be a detective. It's not him really interacting with anything that, say, Nolan has expanded on, and even what Gotham is talking about, which is like the mobsters. They're not in this at all. This is real Killer Croc. You've got the Huntress. You've got Oracle. You have Catwoman. You have Poison Ivy. All these classic Batman characters.
And Superman and Lois Lane as well.
Yeah. And we get a little holiday off to Metropolis, which is so pretty in comparison.
Compared to dirty Gotham,
So this, to me, is a neat little setup for the Hush character, most definitely.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons why we definitely covered it, we mentioned, was the character of Tommy Elliot. I really like how this is played out. I don't remember as a kid reading that many stories of Batman where there was any kind of flashbacks to when Thomas and Martha Wayne were alive. The big difference between this Tommy Elliot and the Tommy Elliot that we saw in episode 8 of Gotham is that this character and Bruce are friends, and it's before his parents are killed. So
that's
So it's kind of predates that. Bruce actually did have a mate, did have a friend that he hung around with and trusted with a lot of. With everything, they seem to play together like brothers, is the way they're described. Tommy also gives him some really good advice, which seems to play out throughout this arc. The advice that Tommy gives him is, "You won't beat me unless you know, because you don't know me. I know you better than you know yourself, and you can't beat an opponent unless you know their weaknesses and you know their strengths." Which is playing out all the way through when he starts to face off against any of his enemies. He's facing off against Killer Croc and realizes very quickly that this is not the Killer Croc that he's used to dealing with. He's suddenly got a new modus operandi, I suppose. He's kidnapping and looking for ransom money, whereas previously he would just rip the boy in half, essentially, is the way that it's said.
It plays out in Metropolis, where he comes up against Superman as well. And it's all in this flashback where both Bruce Wayne and Tommy Elliot are playing strategy games. Almost, it looks like chess, but I don't know whether it is. It looks more like say Risk or something like that.
Or very rich chess.
Very rich chess. And as you say, he goes, I can always think like you, Bruce. That's why I always beat you. You can't think like me. And so there you go. It's almost like a setup for one of the lessons that Bruce must learn as he grows up and ultimately becomes Batman. There's also another connection as well, a more personal, intimate connection as well, in that Tommy Elliot loses one of his parents. In this case, he loses his dad in a car accident. But it doesn't necessarily turn out as nicely as it should do, because Bruce promises him that his dad, Thomas Wayne, a surgeon and doctor, will save Tommy's dad. But ultimately he can't. And that leads to a huge amount of upset, because he asks that question, I suppose, as a kid would do. You know, why did you have to tell me that everything was going to be all right? Because it's not worked out like that. Yeah. It's a really good scene, a really good set of panels, and really good interaction between the two characters. That's a great additional connection in here as well. Yeah.
And again, it does play out quite a lot in Gotham, where they have some simple lessons that Bruce is learning when he's talking to Selina, for example, in Gotham. He's learning little bits that he's going to carry through and will help him develop his persona as the Batman, I suppose, in future. So seeing something like this, where he's learning stuff from Tommy that he's still using 20 or 30 years later, is great to see in comic book form as well, you know?
Yeah, and there's certainly there's this one sort of scene in the comics where Thomas and Martha Wayne are looking down as they're playing this game, and they seem quite happy that Bruce has got this friend.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's even to the point where Tommy and Bruce go to Metropolis together with Thomas Wayne and Alfred. And there's great imagery of sort of the old costumed Green Lantern and Icicle fighting it out together. One of the things you kind of get the sense here is that Tommy is much more open to exploration. He seems like he's less disciplined or constrained, and he's willing to go off and explore. Bruce is very much, but my dad said for us to stay here outside the hotel whilst they go in and check in and all this, and it ends up with them both being stuck in the hotel room in Metropolis for the weekend whilst Thomas Wayne is doing business there, that's what I assume he's doing.
Yeah.
But there's that slight different nuance, even within the comic, that he calls Alfred Alf.
Yeah.
You know, it's much more informal, much more relaxed kind of air about Tommy Elliot than Bruce, who seems much more sort of tight and constrained within himself. Yeah. Which I think is a really interesting difference.
Bruce is a real rule follower, isn't he? Yeah. It's again, I totally believe, after watching the first 10 episodes of Gotham, they've kind of taken a lot of Selina's character is quite similar to Tommy Elliott's character. She's the one that's pushing the boundaries quite a lot and telling Bruce what he should be doing to push those boundaries. She's the one that Alfred, his surrogate father in the TV show, looks at the two of them and says it's really good for Bruce to have a friend like this, despite my reservations, for example. But really, really enjoyed that.
It's a great little embellishment to the whole sort of backstory to Bruce Wayne, as you say. I think as well, the flashbacks serve as a huge number of different narrative lines throughout the story, which I think is really interesting way of structuring the entire comic story arc. It's got the actual story of the ransom for the kid who's been kidnapped, Killer Croc, them going to Metropolis, Batman and Catwoman sort of forming this romantic entanglement, all these different stories going through. You then have in little boxes that inner narrative or monologue of Bruce Wayne, of Batman, who sets up all the introductions to different characters that you meet. And then you have these flashbacks back to another time with Tommy Elliot, the young Tommy Elliot and the young Bruce Wayne, and their friendship. And this really makes for quite a textured, dense and layered style of storytelling. I mean, it packs a huge amount of information and story into 5 issues. It's really... I found it really good. I found it really rewarding, all this different information. And it actually, only 5 issues, I felt I had to keep rereading the pages because there's so much information. And even looking back to some of the other areas where there was a flashback or where there was sort of intermingling of different panels in the comic book where they sort of chop and change the different story arcs. So really complex, dense storytelling.
Yeah, I think Jeph Loeb's done a great job, and Jim Lee's translation of that into the art is fantastic. And I really do think I'll pick up pretty much anything that Jeph Loeb has written. I think he's really, really good, particularly at this time, I suppose. But yeah, you did mention the little romantic relationship between Selina and Bruce in there. It's definitely one of the scenes that I thought was really interesting. That they pick it out, and it's almost quite similar to the way that it's, again, to get back to the show Gotham. It's quite interesting that Bruce in the comic books, the older Batman in the comic books, has kind of the same reaction as the 10-year-old Bruce Wayne to being kissed by Selina Kyle. He doesn't seem to have moved on or matured a huge amount more than the 10-year-old Bruce on that and the love life side of his life, it would seem.
But again, it's that complexity to these two characters which makes their relationship so interesting for sort of superhero comics. It's that it's just not simple. I mean, it's an attraction between the two of them, yet it seems for Bruce that it's a temptation, whereas Selina or Catwoman is just, she just wants to entangle him and get involved.
Yeah.
He is, again, much more standoffish. It mirrors Tommy Elliot and Bruce, the younger versions within the comic, within those flashbacks.
Yeah.
But it starts off with Batman chasing Selina Kyle around Gotham, who's nicked the case of ransom money off Killer Croc. Batman's chasing her. You know, there's this conversation going on. When did you come back to Gotham? You know, she's kind of flippant and sarcastic. Well, it's good that you noticed as she's swinging through, trying to escape from him. And the line is cut, as you say, of Batman's zip line that he's chasing her on.
Yep.
And you think it's her. And there's this sort of conflict between the two of them. And yet, once it's revealed that she didn't cut the line, and it wasn't her, there's this affection between the two of them, which is quite awkward in a way, but it's great.
Yeah.
And whilst it's awkward, it is also wanted by Bruce Wayne and Selina Kyle, under their masks.
As I say, I love that there's a couple of kind of callbacks to it over the next 3 or 4 issues. You know, he keeps kind of saying, I kissed her. I can't believe I kissed her. You know, wow. And Jim Lee's art is really good in the background of additional scenes. You can tell that Bruce is thinking about it, because where it should be the moon or the night sky, it's a picture of the two of them kissing each other. So really well done way of keeping, kind of laying in that thought process that's still in Bruce's head after kissing Selina, which is a huge moment for him.
It's kind of a really grown-up, sexy part of the story. You know, where the two superheroes are kissing the face off one another. It really is, and that's really good to see.
Yeah,
I think.
It's speaking of complex relationships and not kissing the face off each other, but the relationship between Bruce and Clark Kent.
So not biting the face off one another, like, say, Killer Croc. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. The complex relationship between Bruce Wayne and Clark Kent kind of comes out, and between Batman and Superman. There actually is quite a complex, element to all of them. Bruce pops in to say hi to his friend Lois. Clark Kent is there. He sees Bruce in town and doesn't trust the fact, because he knows that he's Batman, he doesn't trust the fact he's only there on business. So he dons his cape and red boots and chases after Bruce to find out why he's really in the city. But Bruce also doesn't trust Superman, even though he's the Boy Scout. He does mention a few times during the book that he's never going to be the Boy Scout that Clark Kent is. but he still takes his kryptonite ring with him to essentially, in case anything goes wrong and he has to battle Superman, he has this one little key component that can take down Superman. Really interesting that the mistrust between the two quote-unquote friends that have been together for many years and have had many battles together and, against each other.
Well, and it's also, as you say, Bruce Wayne says Clark Kent, Superman, will always be the good guy. He's a good guy, and he says, I'm not.
Yeah.
It's a real sort of chalk and cheese, different shades of good.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, at heart he's a good guy. At heart I'm not. From Bruce Wayne, it's really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, you have Bruce Wayne using Clark's love of his life, Lois Lane, to sort of manipulate how he behaves on the battlefield as the two of them are fighting one another, because we have to add, Poison Ivy has used her seduction, her powers of seduction, to control Superman. And this is kind of the worst possible outcome, because you find out that he knows what he's doing, but he's got no power over the pheromones and the control that Poison Ivy has. And this is all to try and, again, get some answers to get the money, the ransom money back off Poison Ivy. Yeah,
absolutely. One of the other kind of pieces that I thought was really good fun in this was the relationship between Ivy and Selina. It starts out with this a little bit of a gag, essentially, that, no man can resist me and no woman either, from Poison Ivy, where she essentially tells you that she's got Selina under her control. They do seem like friends to begin with, but then you realize that this is once again Poison Ivy using her powers. But then the twist when you find out that when Selina finds out she's been double-crossed by Ivy, and then suddenly there's this personal vendetta. Selina is going to go to Metropolis, chase down Ivy, and she is going to beat the heck out of her if Batman doesn't get there first, just purely because she broke their trust, she broke their relationship and friendship that they'd had in the past, and controlled her.
Yeah, she's not a happy kitty. Yeah. And to be honest, again, as you say, that interaction between Batman and Catwoman were, no, I'm doing this. If you want to tag along, you come and tag along. This is after just having a huge intimate moment. She just sort of ups a few somersaults and off she goes and is hell bent on going straight after Poison Ivy. And she doesn't really care whether Batman catches up. Yeah, love it. Absolutely loved all of that. And we even got a little bit of Superdog.
That's right. Crypto was in. Crypto was in a scene which I was pretty shocked about, because it felt like a much more adult kind of themed book. And then it was, well, how do we find him? Let's go get Crypto, who can sniff out anything for miles.
Yeah, it was really weird, but actually, I kind of thought it worked. And then just the few little gags of Catwoman with Crypto as well. After that, it just added a little lightness to it after the big battle in the 5th chapter between Batman and Superman.
I was kind of waiting to see Ace, Batman's dog, appearing, which would be kind of quite interesting as well,
Yeah, but that was good as well. I mean, who knows when the right time to introduce Crypto? A dog with a cape. It's one of those characters or pets of the comic universe where it can work in some situations, it can be sort of light fun in others, and it can potentially look ridiculous if it's handled really badly. Yeah. And in this case, the premise of it was, let's get the sniffer dog. He can sniff out anything. They find Poison Ivy, who's gone to ground. Yep. It kind of worked. I still think a dog with a cape is kind of odd.
Just a little. And you do have the world's greatest detective there, so Batman could have found her. But,
yeah. But again, it's that whole... it brought in a light element to this, because there are some relatively dark aspects to this. Some really kind of sort of tragic, touching moments. And one in particular that I want to kind of reel back on, and I think it's in issue 3, The Beast. And obviously this is all relating to Killer Croc, who's been embroiled in this whole ransom. And as you say, there's something suspicious going on, because this isn't what Killer Croc does. But
it's in his name. He's killer.
Pain to the Killer Croc. He's brought out to be more than just this monster or the beast, as the issue's titled.
Yeah.
It is that there is a man, or there was a man, behind that, with emotions, with thoughts, with tenderness. And he's been imprisoned, and we have Amanda Waller even in here.
That's right.
With the FBI capturing him, bringing him down after the ransom goes wrong for him. But he escapes from prison, and he goes to confront Catwoman, who he thinks has double-crossed her with the stolen money. But he gets captured by Batman, who tries to kind of pull him down. He says, you can trust me. And there's a real, it's just one pane where he goes, look at me. Look at what I've become. That money was to fix. And he doesn't get to finish the sentence.
Yeah.
As the FBI come charging in, and it suddenly moves to, I thought I could trust you, and look what's happened. But you immediately, or at least for me, was to fix me, to fix who and what I've become. He gets interrupted, but this is such a personal moment where he opens up to, in a sense, his nemesis, Batman. And it's also a hugely tragic moment in the story of just how tragic Killer Croc is, that he doesn't want to be that thing.
Yeah, and there's a couple of moments throughout the story in the internal monologue between, or that you hear from Bruce, or from Batman, essentially, where he keeps kind of looking at Croc and saying, those mutations are getting worse. You know, he sees them 4 or 5 times throughout these issues over the course of, a couple of days, a couple of weeks. And he says that the mutations are getting worse on Killer Croc. So he essentially sounds like he was taking the opportunity to get some money and get this whole mutation fixed. So yeah, it's a pretty tragic moment in there. Yeah. Anything else about the story that you want to kind of bring out, John?
I just think it's, there's the Huntress in here. We talked about the Huntress. She was in one issue of Gotham Central.
Yeah.
But here she has a sort of a rescue role where she comes to save Batman after his line has been cut, with the help of Oracle. So again, it's just that idea that this series of issues has a much fuller sort of supporting cast for Batman. And I think the other main thing is then at various stages throughout these first 5 issues, we get to see this unknown man who seems to be behind this whole kidnap and the involvement of Poison Ivy and Catwoman. He's got a trench coat on. His face is bandaged. And it's a question of who is this person.
Yeah.
What is his relationship to this kidnap and all these different crimes and even the ransom money, but with Batman, because we see him as, we see this unknown man as Poison Ivy hands part of the ransom money over to him, and we also see him on the rooftop as the Huntress is coming to rescue him, along with the Batmobile, controlled by Oracle.
Yep.
He's there at all these different moments of Batman chasing and following these clues of this particular crime.
Yeah, he's certainly always watching, yeah.
Yeah, and then he even makes it then to Metropolis as well, this unknown figure, as sort of Batman and Superman are kind of shaking hands after they've had a massive fight. Half of Metropolis has either been blown up by Batman.
As usual.
Again, with the bandages around his face, he kind of says, what are friends for? And he repeats a line that Batman and Superman say as they shake hands, to say kind of no hard feelings kind of thing. And he repeats that, what are friends for? And then begins to laugh and laugh as he's sort of from a distance watching them through through a pair of binoculars.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's one of the big elements of this is, who is he?
Absolutely.
What's he about? What's his relationship to any one of these characters, including Batman?
Yeah, and hopefully we'll get to find out when we do our review of Volume 2. What's your feeling on the actual issues themselves? Volume 1, would you recommend it?
Definitely. In terms of the bigger story, I would recommend it. I'd give it 3.5 to 4 bandages out of 5. I think, again, it's a really complicated and densely layered story that brings in flashbacks, inner monologues, as well as the storyline. The art is superb. The writing is superb. It sets up a mystery, a suspicion as to who this unknown man is. It really delves into the theme of friendship, friends, acquaintances of Batman, how they work or don't for Bruce or for the Batman.
Mm-hmm.
The young Tommy Elliot, the young Bruce Wayne. You again have the murder of Thomas and Martha Wayne at the start of here. Again, that relationship, his mother and father and him. There is a lot of personal moments between Batman and his, when I say acquaintances, even his enemies, like Killer Croc with Catwoman. I found this all really enriching of the Batman universe, of Batman personally, and of Gotham. So I think this is a strong recommend. It really sets up nicely for Volume 2, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And it's intriguing. It sets up the intrigue for who this person is, and how that might be related to an acquaintance of Bruce Wayne or Batman.
Yeah. For me, definitely, I totally agree with you. This is one of my kind of favorite characters being brought to life for the first time. I'm really hopeful that we're going to see a lot more of that in Volume 2. But Jeph Loeb is really at the top of his game here. He was in top form. He was a big get for DC to get him to come back to the universe and write some more comics within this. And it really feels like he's enjoying playing with the pieces and playing with the toy box that he has available to him. Not only do we get to see all the characters we talked about and all the villains we got to talk about, he does have mention of the whole kind of cast of characters, cast of support for Batman. Oracle is constantly covering Bruce, making sure that he's okay, and has constant access to all the rest of the cast of characters. It's mentioned about Robin. It's mentioned about other characters that could come to save him. Turns out it's Huntress of all the people that are available to go and save Bruce. I like that. Overall, but mostly and definitely looking back on this after watching 10 episodes of Gotham, it's a really good tie-in issue. So if you've enjoyed the show Gotham, why would you be listening to us if you didn't? If you've enjoyed the show Gotham, definitely go and check out Hush. It's definitely worth a recommend. But come back to us when we get to Volume 2.
Yeah, remember, support your local comic book store, or you can go onto Comixology and download a digital version of Hush. Certainly, we would recommend that.
So come back to us next time when we cover Volume 2 of Hush.
Yeah, and remember, you can listen to this podcast, obviously, and any of the other podcasts that we've done previously. We are on iTunes and also Player FM. We are on Stitcher. We're on any other good podcast catcher. So just search Gotham or Gotham TV Podcast, and we should hopefully pop up in the search. You can also, if you have any questions about what we've covered in this podcast, or anything else about previous podcasts, or even on Gotham, you can, of course, provide feedback to us at feedback@gothamtvpodcast.com, or you can leave us comments or feedback on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, on Google+. Again, follow us, tweet to us. We're on all of those social media platforms, and just search Gotham TV Podcast.
Yep, and speaking about feedback, we got a little feedback in from Daniel Butcher.
Fascinating.
So Daniel's given us his feedback on the first 10 episodes of Gotham. He's saying he's apologising for his tardiness. He's just caught up on the winter finale. So wanted to give us a bit of feedback on his thoughts so far in the season. So he says, firstly, the bad. I'm afraid that Jim Gordon's story is not keeping my interest. In the Bomber episode, I totally forgot what case he was working on while I was watching it. Not a good sign there for Daniel, unfortunately. And I think we made the comment that episode about the Bomber seemed to have much more about the connections between Fish Mooney and Falcone and all that kind of stuff. Whereas he's right, the investigation seemed to take a total backseat in there, and Jim Gordon and Harvey Bullock seemed to kind of fall out of that episode quite considerably. So understand that. I still love Jim Gordon. I think he's a really good central character. We did speak about it a lot on our last episode. But the other piece from Daniel, he says, the good, call me weird, but I really enjoyed the adventures of Bruce Wayne and Selina. In fact, I could watch pretty much that every week. There's so much formative about Batman going on in those scenes, and I dug it. Maybe that links to my bad. For me, the star of the overall Batman story is Batman. So I enjoy seeing Batman be made, but I'm a bit less interested in the development of a key ally. There you go. So I understand, yeah, I think David Mazouz has done a great job. We've talked about him on a number of occasions. I think he's done a really good job of bringing some life to the character of young Bruce.
I think so. I would completely agree with Daniel there. It's really a great young actor who's brought so much to the young Bruce Wayne, given what Bruce Wayne becomes. It's a real difficult thing to carry off. I think it links as well to one of Daniel's other points just after this, which he says that Sean Pertwee as Alfred is fantastic. He's everything that we should want in an Alfred, and his determination in the winter finale was fantastic. Yeah. And I think that's one of the other aspects, is that I think what this show has really gotten so right is Bruce Wayne and Alfred Pennyworth and their dynamic and their relationship, and that's testament to how they've been written for and to the two actors who are portraying them. And I think on top of that, as Daniel has said, that interaction then between Bruce and Selina has been, and in our opinion, I think we said this earlier in our previous podcasts, that has worked as well. It's really expanded on Bruce and his insecurities, his fears. Yeah. As you said just earlier in this podcast, that kind of seems to have reflected that awkwardness where Selina kisses the young Bruce Wayne is almost reflected in Hush, or Gotham reflects Hush in terms of that awkwardness.
Yeah.
And that's a really great continuity to see, I think, here. As well. I think just going to Jim Gordon, I think sometimes it can be difficult for, in a sense, the straight man of the piece to come across as maybe interesting, I suppose, as Daniel puts it. When you have all this other craziness going on, it maybe sometimes seems difficult to say, maybe sort of put that normality almost in context with everything else going on. But I think that normality that is brought by Ben McKenzie's Jim Gordon is really, really good. It's a real sort of foundation and anchor for the episodes and for the show. I think maybe sometimes at the expense of exploring Jim even further, in even more in depth, like they have done with Bruce and Selina, such as with Barbara Keane, it sometimes seems to get forgotten a bit, I think, by the writing, when dealing with sort of those investigations that occur in the episodes. I think sometimes they can just get maybe lost or just not explored as much as they could be. Yeah, no, I understand that. Just another point from Daniel. He once again is calling out Richard Kind, who plays Mayor Aubrey James in the show. He says, seriously, I will say it again, Richard Kind gives me the shivers. He is so creepy. I think the final episode of the season, Richard Kind was fantastic, and I talked about it myself as well. I really like the character. Closes out with now I can catch up on my favorite DC podcast after catching up on the show. So we're delighted. All right, and thanks again for listening, Daniel, and thanks for your thoughts. Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you, Detective Daniel.
Yeah. If you want to hear more of Daniel's thoughts, he runs a podcast called Welcome to Level 7, which is about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And I think they're covering Agent Carter now at the moment as well, while Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is on a break. Yeah. Which we haven't seen. It's not available over here. But go check out welcometolevel7.com and check out their podcasts. Thanks again for your feedback. If you want to send us feedback, as John mentioned earlier on, you can email us at feedback@gothamtvpodcast.com. You can follow us on Twitter at Gotham TV Podcast.
Yeah, and also Instagram and Google+. You can follow us. Just search Gotham TV Podcast. Thank you so much again for listening. We can't wait to hear any of your thoughts on Hush, and certainly join us for Volume 2 of Hush.
Excellent. Yep. Thanks very much for joining us.
Bye.
Gotham TV Podcast. Do not cross Alan and Montoya.
Tonight I say goodbye to everyone.